So you decided to buy a reel-to-reel recorder machine, but you don't know exactly which one you want, which one to look out for. The prices are very high, and everything seems daunting and difficult to understand. Well, today we have a solution. I'm going to try to explain what is, at least in my opinion, the correct procedure, the correct approach to purchase your first reel-to-reel. Okay, are you ready? This is going to be a very particular video, but I think if I knew this information when I was starting this passion, I would have saved a lot of money and time. Are you ready? Let's dive in now. Okay, guys, so if you are serious about tape, reel-to-reel tape, open reel tape, magnetic tape, not cassettes, you really decided you want to explore the dark side of audio, where everything was born, where that fantastic sound of the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s, but also something in the 90s, just gave a different touch and created incredible albums. And you want to try this. You want to have a piece of history possibly with you, and you want to explore those incredible sonics and put your hands on those amazing, beautiful, incredible machines. Okay, we got you covered. So I'm going to try to give you a few tips, but not normal tips. You'll see why. That's why I was talking about approach, okay? A direction that, in my opinion, I want to underline this, is most probably the best you can follow in order to get your first, or around that, maybe your second, you're still confused, reel-to-reel machine for the different purposes, what to leave aside. And actually, in the end, I'm going to try to give you a few recommendations on the machines, okay? Plus a few hints on the tapes, where to find them without spending an arm and a leg. Let's go. Okay, our first point is dedicated to 4 versus 2 track. I think that usually, a lot of times, we think that the 2-track world is a little too much for us. We're not ready. It's something a little more too much in the pro side of things. So we start to bring our attention, lean towards the 4-track. Much more accessible, much more easy to find, cheaper tapes, a lot of selection in the pre-recorded area. It's just more seductive, and I perfectly understand. Actually, I'm going to tell you my story afterwards, because I started as well with my 4-track machine right here, my Philips. So, in my opinion, you should not do that. You should not do that, because sooner or later, you're going to want to try master tapes, master tape copies, high quality, 15 inch per second 2-track. Okay? So, that is one of my first and most important recommendations. Don't focus on 4-track. Unless you've already know 100% that you want to do that, you want to follow that, then okay, no problem. I mean, if you know everything and you cut out everything that it was unnecessary, and you know you want to pursue 4-track machines, no problem at all. This is probably not the video for you. I did a video on 4-track. Here is a link. You're also going to find all the links in the video description. But if, once again, you're on the fence, don't stop there, because actually, might as well hunt, and afterwards I'll give you some recommendations, suggestions, might as well hunt for a hybrid type of machine, which can have a 4-track playback and a 2-track playback and rec capability. But we'll get back to this. I just wanted to say this fork in the road. Don't follow the 4-track just because it seems more quick, easier accessible, okay? You're really going to want to try the master tapes at a certain point. let's proceed. Our second point is dedicated to consumer choice. Okay. Once again, you're probably going to orient your selection, your ideas, because of budget reasons, because of money, towards a consumer choice. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to throw away money. You're going to throw away your time because you're going to instantly regret searching, getting, pursuing, buying something of that choice, of that type. For a series of reasons, which I'm going to tell you now, which I have some notes here. Well, if you get a mid-low quality type and not a semi-pro or pro type of machine, you're probably not going to have the possibility to select the equalization. I mean, the vast majority of machines out there are NAB. Hence, you're going to want to try IEC or CCIR. These are the two equalizations. If all these things are not making much sense to you, you're really at the beginning. So at that point, take a look at this video. This is the first video where I start to explain the true track stuff, types and tips and things like that, okay? Here is the link to the first part. You're going to find the first and the second part, both links in the video description. Turning back to why you shouldn't buy a consumer type of machine. First of all, as I said, the equalization. As I said, most machines are NAB, but the vast majority of tapes you're going to find, the master tape copies, especially those coming from Europe, so a big selection, are all in IEC. But in any case, you want both. You want both, because otherwise you're going to have to exclude a huge section. Why do that? If you have to get a machine, you want to have full accessibility, especially if you're starting to go at a higher level. In fact, you're not going to find this, most probably. Another aspect, speeds. In most consumer machines, you're probably going to be relegated to a specific speed or two speeds, usually the lower type of speeds, meaning the 3 3/4 or the 7.5, and things like that. While instead, once again, if you want to have access to the high quality material, the 15 inch per second or even 30 inch per second, that's rare. I mean, very few machines have that, and there are not that many tapes out there. So mainly we could say 15 inch per second. That's what you're really interested in. But there are consumer machines that cover perhaps 7.5 and 15, okay? So this is not a solid point, but it's good to mention it. Another important point is the number of tracks, the type of tracks. As I said, you can go towards a hybrid type of machine, meaning then that you have a 4-track and a 2-track playback and or rec capability, interchangeable, as we will see in other machines like the Technics. There's a lot of models where you have these different combinations. But in the end, it's always better to have a dedicated machine. Now, this is really if you want to go at the top quality machines. Rarely, but there are some very high quality exceptions. For example, like the Denon, the one loved by Team Paravicini, the 710F, which has actually the capability of dealing with 4 and 2-track. But that's very rare. You usually have something dedicated to 2-track. But since we're talking about your first or around your first reel-to-reel, a hybrid solution is probably the best, even though that probably involves a higher expense, but not that much, not as much you expect. But once again, we'll get to that afterwards. I will, in concrete, physically tell you what is a good solution. Another aspect, another important point that you're going to lose if you go towards a consumer type of machine is actually one of the most important of all, okay? One of the most important features of all of a quality tape machine, of a pro, semi-pro type, the preamplifiers. A lot of times, especially in the past, now people are a little more aware of this. A lot of times they just associate the machine with its output. But no, I mean, you have to consider what types of preamps. And that is why tube preamps, machines that have two preamps, like the old Studers, the C37 and things like that, go for crazy prices because they have those special preamps. But that is actually insane, because you just have to get a good transport and associate it to a good external preamp. But that's a different story, which I will do a dedicated video in the future. But let's go back to our situation, our case. The preamps, consumer grade, no. You're never going to have something of quality. I'm sorry. Once again, after I'll give you some examples. What else? Then, clearly, the heads themselves, the quality of the heads, the frequency extension, and the durability of the heads. In a consumer machine, they are going to go down the hill, unfortunately. Not always. There are good examples. But it's just something to keep in mind, that if you go at a higher level, you're also going to have that in the package. Also, one important point, actually, that a lot of people forget completely is that if you get a consumer, or even a high-quality consumer, like, for example, a Revox, but I'll go more in depth afterwards. In most cases, not all Revoxes clearly, and not all consumers, but in most consumer tape recorders, but in most cases, they are not going to be capable of dealing with the magnetic flux, the strength of the recording on the tape of those master tapes you're interested in. No. So maybe you got your consumer machine, hey, hooray. Maybe it has 2 equalizations, maybe it can read 15 inches per second, but then you put the tapes and something is wrong. There's no dynamics. It's just mushy. It's bad because it can't handle that very high fluxivity, which sometimes goes all the way up to 520 nanowebers. That's a lot, guys. Most of them are lower, 320 or things like that. But still, I mean, you're probably going to miss a lot of that. Plus, if you want to do your recordings, which is a different alley, a different situation, the higher is that fluxivity, based also on the calibration of your machine, etc., the longer those recordings are going to last, because the strength of that signal is going to last for a very long time. That is also why they do that on those machines, on those recordings. They resist also some weak magnetic fields. There's a series of reasons. You want high. Also, another important factor is the transport. Very important factor. I mean, preamp and transport are two important parts of what is a reel-to-reel machine. If the transport isn't that good, which obviously is going to take place in most cases of consumer type of machines, then you may have problems. Wow and flutter, tape tension. I mean, there are a lot of downsides of not having a good type of transport. Now, for example, Revox has decent transports. The problem is something else, but once again, we'll go more in depth when I'll tell you my story. Okay, so considering these elements, I highly recommend to wait. Pause. Put away your money, okay? Put away your money. Wait until you can afford a semi-pro or pro machine. Absolutely. There are also other further reasons, which I'm going to tell you in a while, but already the ones I told you are worth it, are worth spending that extra dollar, that extra euro to keep that special machine with you and really appreciate the sonics, the qualities of those tapes. Let's proceed. Okay, I want to give you a little taste of my story, which is pretty short, but it gives you, it's also the reason why I decided to do this video. Now, as I said, fast lane, easy to do, cheap. Let's go with the 4-track. That's more than enough. I can do my recordings. There's so many fantastic pre-recorded tapes. Wow, how cool. Let's go down that alley and then we'll see what happens. That's what I did. At that time when I got this baby here, I paid this €300, like $350. That's it. I mean, there was no interest at that point, or just little interest in tapes. And things like that. Also, the pre-recorded tapes on eBay and places like that were very cheap. Now they're going skyrocket high. Plus, something that I rarely mention, be careful of those pre-recorded tapes. They do sound very good, okay? Absolutely. In contrast with pre-recorded cassettes, those are very good. But a lot of them have problems because they have not been stored correctly. And probably they went close to magnetic fields, and there are some dropouts. The one of the channel it doesn't have the same strength as the other. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on with those tapes. So keep this in mind also when you want to buy them. But that's a side note. So I decided to go there, and as I said, very soon I said, I want to try 2-track. I don't have access to a huge part. Also pre-recorded tapes, 2-track pre-recorded tapes. And I'm not talking about master tape copies. I mean, there was also 7.5-inch 2-track quality recordings. I did a video on all my pre-recorded collection. Here is a link if you're interested, including 4 and 2-track types. So at that point, I was regretting my first step. Nevertheless, I was happy because I said, okay, I'll just get another machine. I'm going to have to wait, but I'm happy to do this. I have a dedicated machine for 4-track, so it makes sense. But at the same time, and I didn't spend that much, but now if you buy one of these, you are going to spend. That's why it's better to save and go to a hybrid solution, for example, where you can play both. What did I do? Clearly, I went after Revox. I mean, the cliche, the Revox B77 Mark II, the one that you hear talking about all over the place. It has a decent transport. I think it's flimsy on the outside. I never liked it that much. I don't like the colors. I don't like the aesthetics. I wasn't crazy about it, actually. That's my humble opinion on that. And the problem was that it couldn't deal with very high fluxivity of those master tape copies. So once again, I was at the beginning of the whole path. I wasn't making progress. I wasn't going anywhere. I was once again grounded. I didn't have accessibility to play whatever I wanted. So at that point, I sold my Revox very patiently. Took time. Obviously, I lost some money at that point. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. At that point, I said, okay, now I'm going to get a good machine. Good 2-track. What can I get? Oh, wow, the prices are very high. What can I get? What can I get? I finally found a good deal for a Nagra 4S, which is one of the most beautiful machines ever created. But the Nagra is very small. Nagra is a portable recorder. And in my opinion, since I fully refurbished it, I know for sure that the playback quality isn't that good unless you're recording something and then you're playing it back with the same machine. Then it's okay. But if you get other recordings, copies, master tape copies, and things like that, the Nagra was so good. Better than the Revox. Much better. But not as good as I knew and suspected. And plus, I wasn't interested at that time in recording. So, and I also discovered that there were adapters to put the big reels, because on the Nagra you can put only the 7-inch, but you want to put the 10.5-inch reels. That's where the master tape copies are, right? This is the small ones that can go on the Nagra. But most tapes are on this size. And the adapters cost more than the Nagra itself. So once again, wrong choice. I kept an Agra for a few years because it was so damn beautiful, but it was useless, just useless. And I was stuck once again, not able of enjoying things. So what did I do at that point? I also evaluated playback-only machines because I started to say, I don't need to record at that time. A lot of people say this and think this. And there are actually some solutions. There is a famous machine that can only do playback at a decent quality. I don't remember their name. I'll write it here. But apart from that, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Sooner or later, you're probably going to want to record with it. And a machine that can record, it's going to be much more easy to sell back if one day you want to do that. So forget the playback only also machines. I was very close to do that mistake in doing that, but I didn't. And finally, reaching out to a lot of guys, forums, professional techs. I mean, a lot of people, they all told me, okay, go for a Telefunken M15 because they are absolutely not expensive as the Studers, because that was the level I wanted. To have full access, you needed that. Or at least those were the best. But the Studers were out of my range, absolutely. Today, insane. The prices of Studers, insane. Just insane. So the Telefunken M15, be careful, not the M15A, but the M15. I also did a video on the M15. Here's a link. The link is also below. Because when fully refurbished, it does have a magical sound. Better than most Studers, actually, and I would say of most recorders, even tube-based out there. Yes, it's that good, and that's why I still have it right behind me, and it's never going to leave me, because it's fantastic. And before, at that time, they were going like for 1,000, 1,200, 1,400 euro. And now I see them almost doubled, but not as Studers. I mean, Studers now are like 3 or 4 times those prices that they were present when I was looking. So insane. So in doing the comparison, a Telefunken M15, it's pretty rare. It's usually M15A, which is also good, but the M15 is much better. The Sonics, and it's just something special that it's hard to find. There are much more Studers now, at least in the US. Before, there were a lot of Telefunkens. I don't see that many, probably because the people are keeping them, especially in Asia. A lot of Asian people understood the quality of the Telefunkens and grabbed them all. Okay, so what happened afterwards? I was happy. I was very happy, but I had a huge problem once again. See? I was stuck with IEC. Plus, there were no view meters, nothing, very difficult to calibrate. I have an idea what's going on. Because the Telefunkens, clearly coming from Germany, have only an IEC equalization. Sometimes you can find the selector, but that's something almost custom they asked in certain places. Very rare, and that will boost the price. The classic Telefunken doesn't have that. So once again, I said, damn it, I'm still stuck. I want to have full capability, even though I was enjoying greatly, finally, my master tapes, the few ones that I had. So in the end, I went to a Studer, and I got my A810, as most of you know, which has all the different speeds from 3 3/4 all the way up to 30 inch per second. It has both equalizations. It can handle any type of tape. Clearly, it's a master recorder. So it was just the optimal solution. And in the end, then I also got an external preamp, something that I haven't presented yet on my channel. But as I said, I'll do a dedicated video on that. So this is my story. And as you can see, with just a few machines, how many mistakes I did, how much money I threw away, how much time. Time does have a value. I threw away, it's experience, but if I knew all of this, I would have just wait a second, paused, put away some money, and then finally get something that was capable of dealing with everything. Also because it's difficult to have enough room for all these machines. A lot of times you have room for one, maybe not even that. Maybe you have to look for a compact one. Okay, I hope this journey of mine kind of explained why I'm trying to suggest to go to a certain type. But this is not the end. There are other aspects to consider. Let's proceed. Okay, our next point, very simple. Investment. It's an investment, absolutely. If you get a pro machine or even semi-pro, something close prosumer, let's say, at a mid-higher segment, it's going to be investment. Truly. I mean, it's always going to gain value in time. No question about it. So also keep that in mind. You're not going to lose money on this stuff. You're not. In fact, I know a guy, actually, Luigino, if he's watching me or recognize me, hi, Luigino, he sold me the Telefunken, actually. And he has in his house like something like 40 or 50 machines that he collected at the end of the 80s, 90s through his life in Germany when he was working in Germany. And he knew that the prices were going to go up. Like he told me he had 10 Studers, the early ones with tubes, the C37, but many others, like 4 or 5 Telefunkens, many other Studers. I mean, he was full of stuff. And he knew that was going to be his huge investment. And when there was a period of crisis or some problems, he could sell those for big money. I mean, but apart from this example, is just to say that if you're going to get a machine, it's going to stay with you. And when you're ready to sell it back, you're not going to lose any money. Actually, you're going to earn it. Trust me. Let's proceed. Okay, now, apart from this, let's talk other tips to consider when you're doing this process. Try to get, I always say this, a serviced machine, okay? And if you don't, make sure you have someone ready to service it immediately, okay? Because otherwise, you're really going to benefit of 25%, 30% of the sonics, of the quality, and then at a certain point it's going to break. Or maybe it's already broken and then you start to find someone to service it. No, it's difficult technology. You really need a technician that knows what he is doing, and they are rare. So if you can, and I suggest to spend that extra dollar, I know every time we're going up and up and up, a service machine, perhaps coming from a shop, a vintage shop that is selling used machines like that, is just better. It's going to save time and money. Mainly time, I would say. Let's proceed. Another important aspect to consider when you're doing this acquisition is calibration. The technician who is going to service it during purchase or afterwards will also perform that. Okay, he's probably going to ask you, if it's correct, how to calibrate the machine, because it's always a good idea to calibrate the machine for a specific tape. Clearly, it's mainly oriented for recording. That's where you're going to use it. Nevertheless, if you have a calibrated machine, you know that you can use that tape that you decide. Usually the best of the best is SM900 or the top quality of ATR. No problem. You decide. And at that point, or the LPR90, which is much more cheap, and it has the same formulation of the SM900. That's also a great solution to keep expenses down. And probably if most of those recordings that you're buying, for example, most of my master tape copies are on SM900. And if the machine is already calibrated on that, it does help a little bit in terms of volumes and things like that. You already know that you're more or less in the same ballpark. There are crazy people who calibrate because there are tones at the beginning of the recordings in most cases, where at that point it allows you to calibrate perfectly the volumes of that of the playback. But apart from that, that's insane almost. Apart from that, calibration is something very delicate, very difficult to perform, but you want that because, once again, you want to record sooner or later, trust me, your own music, or as we were going to talk in a minute, also to exchange tapes. Let's proceed. Future-proof. if you decide to buy a renowned machine like high-quality Revox, Studer, Ampex, Telefunken, even Sony, things like that. I mean, machines that aren't almost forgotten or very difficult, obscure models that aren't very frequent to find. They're going to have some problems at a certain point, and you're not going to find people. First of all, people who know how to repair them. And if they do, a lot of times they're not going to have the pieces to exchange the broken parts, unless it's a capacitor. But other stuff, it's very difficult to find. For example, Revox is one of the most serviced. You're going to find the whole entire machine practically. You can rebuild it to get now with all the different parts we have. That's a very positive aspect regarding Revox, all the different models, for example. So also keep in mind this. Don't fall for a very strange model that you think is cool. It looks cool to be different from the other people and things like that. Be careful, because you're going down a difficult road where you may need assistance, and then at that point, as I said, it's going to be difficult to find it. Let's proceed. Okay, this is a more than a tip, a comment, an observation. Just keep in mind, let's say, some advice on the possibility that along your road you may want to have a second machine, because a second machine will allow you to do copies. You never know. I mean, if you have a friend, for example, that has a huge library, that's a no-brainer. You want two machines, or maybe he can do them for you, the copies. So having two machines at a certain point may be something you want to know about, to be, let's say, free of doing some copies, also for exchange. Besides also making copies of your own tapes that if they're very valuable and precious, you want to have a backup tape, you never know, you can do that. There are a lot of reasons why you would like to you can have a double machine. Actually, at that point, you could also then pick, if you know you're going to get two machines, one IC and one NAB, for example. You never know. Let's proceed. Okay, time for recommendations. After all this talk, as I said, in my opinion, I could mention a lot of brands that are a prosumer. Decent prices. I'm going to say something between, let's say, $1,500 / $2,500. I know it seems a lot, but it ain't. Trust me. I mean, if you go and see the top models of Studers and things like that, you have to add a zero. Okay? Enough said. So this ballpark, this range falls a lot of stuff in. Not always, a lot of times, if it's fully serviced, in pristine condition, without not even a little scratch, the price is going to be triple of the models I'm about to tell you about. So it's not always going to be that way, but usually they fall in this range, which I think it's reasonable. You can put away and then finally purchase. So I could tell you about the hybridity of the Technics models, the 1500, the 1506 or 1506, or the 1520, which it's the only one that has a double equalization besides the 1800, I think. But those are very expensive. I mean, it's crazy now. The Technics models, they've become trendy. Everyone has one in the background. They're just too expensive now. So I tend to exclude that. Also because you don't have the double equalization in the lower models. I mean, if you want to sacrifice that, I don't recommend it. They could be a good solution. The 1500 or the 1506, for example, where you have 4-track and 2-track capability, okay? One can record one type and the other is in reverse. In any case, I don't recommend them that much because they're too trendy. They're beautiful, actually. I do admit, and the quality is good. If you find a model at a good price, go for it. But remember, only the 1520 has both equalizations. The other ones, there are other ones, but they're, as I said before, but they're very, 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 even more expensive than the 1520. So I have here some notes. I could also clearly tell you about the Telefunken, but as we said, only IEC. Better not. Or there are lots of Ampex models like the 351, which don't have those exceptional transports, but they have very good preamps. That's where Ampex shines. But again, they're going to be NAB. They're not going to have the double equalization, which you want to have. Trust me, you're sooner or later, you want to have both. Now, you can also play back. Clearly, nothing's going to happen if you play a CCIR IEC tape on an NAB machine, but you're going to miss the frequency, the equalization, the curve is different. So you're not going to have a faithful reproduction. So might as well have that, actually. Otherwise, you can't buy them. What else did I write here? Well, for example, starting to be something a little more considerable, the Revox, the PR99 Mark II. That's very good sounding. But once again, you're probably going to be stuck with the equalization. And that's also a little expensive when it's in good condition. Always remember to check the heads. A lot of people don't put pictures of the heads. Always ask for pictures of the heads. Absolutely. That's fundamental, because to exchange the heads, then you have to realign the azimuth and all the values. It's a nightmare. So make sure you do that. What else? The Sonys. There are excellent Sonys. The TC766 or the TC880-2, both of them. But once again, you're stuck with one equalization. Also the TIAC, the X2000M. Very good. The Philips, the 2-track version of this, the N4522. And so on. There are a lot of them, okay? But I must admit that there is one deck, and this is going to be difficult, tough. I'm not going to be popular here, but I think there's one deck that you should really hunt for. For 8 good reasons. Are you ready? I know, this is going to be strange. But if you have to get one only, that does it all, practically, I think that the only real solution that balance all the different aspects, and I will tell you the 8 motivations, is the Otari MX5050 B2-2. Okay? That hits all the parameters, which are, I wrote them all here. Very good transport. Not the top of the tops. The B3 is even better, but it's going to be more expensive. Blah, blah, blah. So focus on the B2/2 of the MX5050 line. I highly recommend that one. It has a very good transport, which is reliable through time. In fact, a lot of people finished them from the 80s and things like that. You find them all completely scratched because they used them so much. It was reliable, a good machine, even though it's considered a semi-pro machine. It's not a pro machine, actually, even though a lot of people did use them in pro environments. Absolutely. Let's just say on the paper. But absolutely, they were using it for that. In fact, it can handle any kind of flexibility. That could also be another point. It has the capability of dealing with 2 and 4 track. So if you want to play back your 4-track pre-recorded tapes, you can do it. It can have both equalizations. You just have to select it on the rear. NAB and IEC. Very rare. They are very good sounding. Yes, I mean, well, clearly. But yes, the sound is good because the preamps are decent. This is a Japanese machine, and it's rare. There are not that many actually top-notch Japanese machines, but the different Otaris, a lot of people claim that the MR15 is one of the best out there, one of the latest ones, the very big yellow Pro types, or the MR10 or 12 or things like that. They're very good. Here we are at a lower level. Clearly, also something that a lot of people don't know, that inside you can select the voltage. You just have to do a little swap, very simple. So that's also easy if you got one in Japan or in the US or in the EU and you want to move it around, there is the possibility to select it inside. Plus, it's quite easy to calibrate because there are all the little different buttons below. It's something, there are a lot of tutorials also online. It's something you could manage to do because it has a tone generator and things like that. It's very easy. It's quite easy to do. So that's also another plus. And I would say most important of all, it has a very good price. It falls in that range that I said, more or less. Sometimes it's a little more if you want it in pristine condition, but a lot of times it's right in the middle. And there are a good number, especially in the US. I see a lot of them going around. So if you consider all these aspects, wow, I think it's one of the best machines to start. And you're already at an excellent point. And as I said, if you're tired and you want to go to a really, really pro machine, you're easily going to sell it back because it's an excellent product. Okay, a few indications on the tapes, because this is also something they ask a lot. Actually, I did a dedicated video on master tapes, where to find them. Here is a link. But apart from that, because it's easy to tell you, you go in this shop, this other shop, but the prices, even though there are more and more now, tons of labels doing master tapes, official important labels that are releasing copies of the master tapes, of famous master tapes like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, the ones from Hemiolia. They're incredible, but they have a very premium price, very high prices, very expensive. I mean, usually you start from $300. Usually, actually, between 300 and 500, and then there are those like the Hemiolia, which are like 950 euro, which is more than $1,000. I mean, that's insane, I think. In fact, that can't be your fuel for your machine, especially if you're at the beginning. Absolutely not. You have to find copies that other friends have, or exchange them. There are dozens of forums and things like that where you can find people that are willing to do an exchange. You make your own copy and then you exchange it with someone else, or simply you purchase it at a decent price. Now, it's true that tape, the cost of tape is going up and up and up, unfortunately. Yes, that is sadly true. So the whole chain is going to be always more expensive. Nevertheless, if you follow that, and that is why you may want to have a second machine, if you follow that direction of exchange, of getting copies from friends, you're going to have, in most cases, not always, you never know what you're going to have in your hands, if it's a true copy, or even if it is, maybe it's like a 5th, 6th, 7th generation and it doesn't sound that good. You can understand that almost immediately, but that is a good way to keep the expense down and experience finally the quality of tape, the true 2-track tape. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have other recommendations and tips on machines or on what to look out for, please share them with us here below in the comments. We are all interested. Thank you again. And remember, especially today, music is born analog. Ciao, 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 ciao.
Well, guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.